Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please take a moment to leave a comment. Thank you. When most people hear Air Force survival knife, this is the knife that comes to mind. But this was not the first Air Force survival knife, not by any stretch of the imagination. Would you believe that in 1947, when the Air Force was first formed, they adopted a simple bird and trout knife as their survival knife for their emergency gear for aircrew? As crazy as it sounds, it's true. But the story actually begins in World War II. So let's go back a few years, back when the United States Air Force was actually part of the United States Army and was the United States Army Air Force. At the beginning of World War II, the United States Army really didn't have a fighting knife, and they had a contract going to develop one, which ended up becoming the M3 trench knife. However, before then, they also adopted several hunting knives for use by soldiers, and one of them was the PAL RH-36. And this knife actually ended up being used by Aircrew, and it continued to be used throughout World War II as the primary knife used by Aircrew in their bailout gear. And that knife remained with the United States Army Air Force all the way up till 1947, when the United States Air Force was born. And at that time, Curtis LeMay decided he wanted to look for a new knife that was better suited for survival of aircrew. And that's what he did. He set out a contract with specifications on what kind of knife he was looking for, and several knife makers replied to the contract, including Randall, Camillus, and several other companies. And most of them seemed to have missed the mark and were just basically coming out with another combat knife, and that's not what Curtis LeMay was looking for. But one company apparently actually paid attention to what they were looking for and came out with this, which was by Boker, and it is the Boker 155 bird and trout knife. And it was basically a knife straight off the assembly line. Nothing special, nothing new. They did not specifically make it for the contract or anything. It was just their bird and trout knife. And you see here the number on it, the Boker 155, Boker USA. And they used this for the trials, and it was exactly what Curtis LeMay was looking for. Well, almost exactly what he was looking for. Curtis LeMay basically said, this is what I'm after. It's lightweight. It's very inexpensive. A very big deal. He did not want to have to be spending a lot of money for this knife. And it would work for various survival situations. The only thing it was lacking was a lanyard hole. He wanted a lanyard hole on the knife, and he was not crazy about this style of sheath. He wanted a sheath more like a tube style sheath that would protect most of the knife handle. And so Boker went back to the drawing board. They came out with this sheath, drilled a hole through the aluminum handle for a lanyard, and came out with the Strategic Air Command E-1 survival knife. This was a knife used in the E-1 survival kits, not only for Strategic Air Command, but all aircrew in the United States Air Force. And it started going into production in 1948 and lasted all the way through the Korean War. So you can see right away there's nothing special about the knife. Matter of fact, it often flies under the radar among collectors because all it is marked as Boker 155. There's nothing on here that says it belongs to the Air Force or anything. And unless you know what you're looking for, and this the way this hole is drilled in the pommel and the style of sheath that the knife comes with, you would easily mistake it as any other bird and trout knife. And the real question is, why this knife? Let's see. First of all, the overall length of it is 8 3/4 inches long. It's got a 4 5/8 inch blade with a 4-inch cutting edge on it, and about a handle that's about 4 inches long. So not a very big knife, and that was one of the selling points of it. Curtis LeMay was looking for a very lightweight knife that could go into an emergency kit. The knife is not going to be out there doing everything. The knife is designed to be part of a kit. The kit also included a folding saw, a machete, a collapsible 22 caliber rifle for hunting small game. And while if you're hunting small game, you need something to cut it up with, and that's what this knife is really there for. It's a bird and trout knife. It's there to be used as a simple camp knife. It's not here so that the aircrew are going to be able to take on hordes of Chinese or North Koreans or take on the entire Soviet army or anything, because that's not what the aircrew is supposed to be doing when they bail out. What they should be doing is evading the enemy and waiting to be rescued. And this knife is supposed to give them a chance to be rescued, not a chance to fight off the enemy. It's a chance for them to hide out. And that's why this knife was adopted. It was part of a kit and designed specifically to help the aircrew live off the land. But while the knife was very practical in purpose, I guess it just wasn't military enough. And so the bird and trout knife ended up being replaced by the Marbles Jet Pilot knife, which was a little more purpose-built and a lot more expensive, and came with a 6-inch blade originally, I believe. And then even that was determined, why do we need a 6-inch blade? So then we settled down to a 5-inch blade on the Air Force survival knife, and this is the one everyone is much more familiar with the backing here. And this knife actually is closer to what you would have found on the RH-36, except it has a 5-inch blade instead of a 6-inch blade. And you have the saw on the back here, which is actually designed for cutting through plexiglass. It's really not a wood saw. And then they added the little feature of holes in here for so you can strap it onto something to make a spear out of it. And you got the pommel that is used as a hammer and such. But still, that might be the knife everyone is familiar with. But this was the first United States Air Force E-1 emergency knife, the Boker 155 bird and trout knife. And regardless of what they are using today, as in the ASEK or anything else, this is the knife that started it all for the United States Air Force. Oh, and one final comment. About 4 or 5 years ago, Boker came out with their Strategic Air Command knife, which is a supposed copy of this knife. You will see from the inset photo below that it is not quite exactly like this knife. The handle is particularly different. Blade wise, it's about the same, and you'll notice the markings on the blade are totally different. You won't see the 155 or the Boker USA on the back of it. So it's very easy to spot the difference between it. It does come with a tube style sheath like this, but it will say SAC on here for Strategic Air Command, and the originals did not have that either. But if you're looking for a good bird and trout knife, you might want to consider grabbing that knife anyway. It uses an SK5 carbon steel, which is about the same as a 1080 carbon steel. The original knives used a 1095 carbon steel. That's the basic difference between the two. You can look at the picture and see the difference in the handle. But I thought I'd just mention that also. So if you can't get one of these and you're looking for a good bird and trout knife, you might consider that Boker Plus sack knife anyway. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Knife Chats, and if you did, please like and share it with your friends. Comments are always welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. Hope to see you soon.